Welcome, Vatech family, to our 8th Vatech weekly webinar series in our session. Today is May 20th. I am Jim Mayer, Education Team Manager, as always broadcasting live here in St. Louis. I have the pleasure of working with my coworker Paul Satone out there in Las Vegas. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, Jim, how you doing? Great to be back with you this week. Last week we had a great session with Gary Cady and Lisa McDonald discussing total health dentistry and overall patient health. This week, we're looking at the guided surgery and implant workflow. So we'll be joined by Dr. Michael Morchat, a board certified radiologist, to review and plan a case, and also Brett Royal and his team in Texas at Implant Concierge. So great to partner with them on this one. So really excited about this.
Me too, Paul. You know, this is one question we always get with guided surgery when we do our trainings is where to start. You know, how do I do the guides? There's a lot of working pieces, and I think we're getting a lot of answers and really do some pretty cool stuff of showing some live patient positioning, 3D printing, really the whole process for digital guided implant workflow. So that's really going to be neat. Paul, what do we have coming up in our web series?
Sure. So our next webinar is going to be on June 3rd. So we're gonna skip a week next week due to the holiday, and our next one will be on June 3rd, session 9. We'll be discussing extraoral imaging and minimal, safety distance contact regarding COVID-19 and kind of going back to work. So really excited to kind of do this next one. And beyond that, we're probably going to move these larger webinars to every month. So we're thinking, the first Wednesday of every month, and we'll give out more information about that, but that's what's coming up on the 3rd of June. So with that, any feedback, again, greatly appreciated. If you have any feedback on this or future webinars, the email is going to be sales@vatechamerica.com. Any questions for our education team regarding the software at all, please feel free to reach out to us at education@vatechamerica.com. Customer support, anything support related, a great way to contact them is email, and that's cs@vatechamerica.com. And then our website, vatechamerica.com, which also all the previous webinars are going to be on there. So feel free to go there and check those out if you haven't been on all of those. And then our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn with the handle Vatech America. So lots of ways to get a hold of us there.
Perfect. Great to note that, Paul, because we do get a lot of questions of how do I go back and view these. And we can always go to the Vatech America website, review all the past recorded sessions that we've had, and even some training videos on there. So everything is going to be recorded for access for everyone afterwards. As always, a little housekeeping here, navigation of what we're seeing. Everyone should see the panelists at the top of the screen and then their screen at the bottom. Off to the right, you do have your GoToWebinar contact box here. You can collapse your arrow over here. At one point, when we do our live positioning, we are going to only show the video at the top, and you can always manipulate that with this bar right here if you need to show that larger. If you're having any audio issues and you're using your onboard computer, go ahead and click on the help button here. That'll help you troubleshoot. If you continue to have those issues, just go ahead and call in on the phone, and that will be a direct line into the webinar session. Please note that everybody is muted. So you do have the option of discussing questions, and we encourage your questions with us and the Implant Concierge team. Right down here, questions, you can enter a question for the staff. We have our education team standing by to answer any of those questions and reply. Also, the Implant Concierge team. And at the end of the session today, we are going to be talking directly with Implant Concierge team, reviewing the whole process of what we've done. So Q&A session starting at the top of the hour whenever we're finished with our session there. Today's session, there will be no CE provided for this webinar session. So just please note that on there. All right.
So today, our session today, we'll be talking about patient scanning techniques. We'll be using the Vatech Green CT live in the office. We'll be discussing the CT scan review and restorative-based implant planning on the Vatech software. And then finally, we'll demonstrate and show you how to 3D print and guide fabrication from the experts over at Implant Concierge. So going kind of from A to Z with this. So with that being said, we're going to have Dr. Michael Morchat with us. But now I'd like to introduce Brett Royal, who's the CEO and founder of Implant Concierge.
Hey guys.
Hey Brett, how you doing?
Welcome, Brett. Great to have you.
Yeah, great to be here. Bienvenidos a la San Antonio, Vatech family.
Yes, Brett, we're excited to be with your team today. We've been putting in a lot of time for this WebEx, a lot of moving parts. I think it's going to be something really exciting. Paul and I and you, I were discussing, a lot of questions we get is where do we start with guided surgery, or we have a cone beam device, or we're talking about moving into that. There's really no set way to do this, or what is the proper way to do this. And I think you and your team are gonna show us steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through this one easy pattern way to do our planning. And so we're really excited for what you have for us today.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, Jim and Paul, for having us. And it's probably better that you're not in San Antonio, because yesterday we hit 100 and it was sweltering hot. So for everyone who's joining us remotely from your AC, it's better to be there than here, I think, because it's pretty smoky down in San Antonio. But we're very fortunate that here at Implant Concierge, business is starting to come back, like hopefully it is at your practices as well. And so we were going to have a real live walkthrough through the entire office. We could take advantage of the fact that we were pretty much empty, but now since we have a few more team members here who are working and producing guides, we're going to give you a tour of some of the office. You can see a little bit, but the other part will be some videos. But if you can go ahead and hit that next slide for me, I kind of want to walk you guys through the basics of guided surgery and what you're going to see today. Now, it's important that while I'm very fortunate and very happy that you're getting to learn a little bit about Implant Concierge, you're going to meet some of the team members between Dr. Morchat and also Andy Morey. But really, these steps are important because whether you're doing it yourself using your own software, or maybe you're using a different provider, these steps are going to hold true. So this is not just an Implant Concierge. Obviously, we'd love to have your business and earn your trust. But if you do it yourself, these are the same steps. So this is going to be very applicable, whether you use us, use someone else, a local lab, or whoever. So, what we're going to focus on today at Implant Concierge is really the bread and butter of what makes us so unique. You're going to see Andy actually create a case and use the platform as a dynamic tool to manage your workflow. And that's going to be a part of the presentation. But the first part that we're going to really focus in on is really the capture of diagnostic data, mainly the CBCT, because it's critical. The CBCT and the diagnostic cast, or the STL file, and we have to have that. Those two data sets are critical, whether it's from Implant Concierge or doing it yourself. If the data isn't good and the input is bad, then obviously you know that the equation means bad output. So it's really critical. We reject probably close to about 13% of the DICOM that we receive. We actually have to reject because it was either scanned in the correct modality, the patient wasn't positioned correctly, or there were patient movements. So Dr. Morchat's going to do a great job of showing you how to avoid that, so we don't have a bad or poor output as far as a surgical guide. But I'm also going to show you about STL files and when to use a diagnostic cast versus intraoral scan, or a different tool that the Vatech Green Machine has that you're going to see as well. And then we're going to talk about finalizing the treatment plan after we merge the data, finalize the treatment plan, and make the process really simple of production, 3D printing, and also even shipping out the surgical guide. So you're going to see that in action today. If we can get to the next slide, I want to talk about this because this is more of a pictorial view about the steps. Really, you're seeing 6 steps. So one, obviously starting the case that you're going to see, taking a great CBCT and uploading it. You're going to see that in action. And number 3 and 4, they kind of go together. If it's a simple partially edentulous, maybe the patient is missing 1 or 2 teeth, we don't need to have a virtual wax up. Implant Concierge technicians can drop a tooth in and get it really close. But if you want an extremely precise treatment plan, an extremely precise restorative treatment plan based upon the tooth positioning, we recommend that you do your own wax up, or have a lab do a wax up, or send us both models, the upper and lower, and the bite, and we'll do a virtual diagnostic wax up for you as well. But you have different options. On number 4, what's an option is that if the patient has an RPD and you're happy with the teeth in space as is, well, then we don't need a wax up. You can just provide us 2 models. One, the diagnostic cast, without the RPD, or you can have the patient wear the RPD and take a pickup impression and send us that diagnostic cast of the pickup impression. So technically you would have the DICOM plus the diagnostic cast plus the restorative information. So, there's different ways to work with it, different ways to provide it, and that's what we're going to kind of talk about today, is that STL file before we jump into the DICOM. So if you can show that next slide there, Jim, let me kind of talk about this a little bit. At Implant Concierge, our recommendation is always to use an intraoral scanner, okay? An intraoral scanner, and I really don't care. It doesn't really matter to us. I'm not going to provide any kind of brand name as far as which one's best or not, because they're all, as you guys know, amazing technology, and they all work really well for guided surgery. There's no one intraoral scanner that I can say, hey, that's not a good machine. Let's not use that. We have great success with all of them. So it's great if you have an intraoral scanner, because you can just easily take a digital impression and upload that STL file to Implant Concierge. Okay. Now, if you don't have an intraoral scanner and you're thinking about purchasing one, then ask me some questions later on at the end of the presentation, and I'll give you some pointers on how to buy one, how to purchase one, the right questions to ask. I'd love to have that discussion, but we'll have that after this discussion, after this webinar. But I will be available for those kind of questions. Now, if you don't have an intraoral scanner, how are you going to get us information? How do we get the diagnostic cast digitized into the STL format? So what you see here is a diagnostic cast. Now, this dentist was nice enough to go ahead and do a wax up. So we literally took the diagnostic cast, they shipped it to us. We put it on a 3-shape scanner, which is in the bottom right corner, and it ultimately looks like a microwave. And we just stick it in there, and it scans the diagnostic cast. We scan the upper, we scan the lower, and then we can also, at that point, we can even take off that wax up and scan the other model. We have all the STL files combined, and we merge those to the DICOM data set. Now, that's not ideal. It's not good for us, and it's really not good for you either from a standpoint of having to ship a diagnostic cast. And the reason why is because obviously the time and the cost, the time of packaging up the diagnostic cast, boxing it up, taking it to the delivery store or having someone pick it up, and then obviously we're all waiting for it to be received here in San Antonio so we can digitize it. So it just adds a lot of cost and money. What's really great is that if you have the Vatech Green 2 machine, that machine is so amazing because not only does it take great CBCT scans, but it also enables you to replace the need for an intraoral scanner for digital impression, because you can take a digital impression of the diagnostic cast using your Vatech 2, and that's a pretty sweet deal. So now you have to ship a model, and we also have to worry about it breaking in transition, and we're not waiting for it to deliver. So it speeds up the process and saves everyone a lot of time and money. So Jim, I think if I'm not mistaken, you have a video kind of show how that Green 2 machine works, don't you?
Yeah, we do, Brett. What we're going to do next is we're going to talk about the two things you just really talked about. The two key things we need for this, or the starting points, is number one, getting the diagnostic cast to you. We have our video here of scanning it within the Vatech Green 2 device. After this slide, we're going to send it down to San Antonio with Brett's team, and we're going to do the second part there where we're going to basically live scan a patient. So let's go ahead and talk about really what we need to, or what the process is for scanning the stone model. We have our Vatech device. We bring up our capture screen, choose our patient. After we choose our patient here, we're going to go up to the acquisition window. So very similar to taking a PAN or CT, same process. Acquisition, we can go to others, or we can go to CT. In this case, we're clicking on others. Off to the right, we're going to get our menu. This is where I can go ahead and choose model. Click on model there. It gives us the option, scanning the upper or lower. So this is where we have to do 2 scans for both arches, but we can choose whichever arch. Then we're going to go down and click on confirm. From this point, we're going to go over to the device, and we have our scanning platform. This allows us to place the cast in the device, set it there. We do have our mid-sagittal beam, line it up center, and then we're going to go ahead and click on ready. After we do that, we're going to come back, click ready on the capture screen, and we're actually going to take the scan. It's a 9-second scan. Once it's finished, it is going to save right there into the Vatech software. So that's really the first step that Brett was talking about of ways to do your cast, your optical scanner. you're mailing it to them in postage or scanning it in the Vatech software. Before we do head down to our team down there in San Antonio, what I'd like to look at next is our capture setup. So right now they're down in San Antonio getting ready to scan patient Andy Mori. Let's talk about setting the patient up. Very simple. We always talk that this is really easier than taking a pan. We're going to go to acquisition. Same thing, go to CT. Have our patient's information there. We're going to choose our scan. In this case, we're doing our larger scan, our 18 by 10 scan there. Occlusion and center. We're going to go ahead and click on confirm. This is going to initialize the machine. It really prompts us at the bottom there. It says the machine is rotating in a position, and then it says click ready. So what we had them do down in San Antonio is get the capture set up to where it's going to say confirm. And now what I'd like to do is let's go ahead and go down to San Antonio, and we're going to go ahead and look at some live patient capture. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my camera down there, and we have Dr. Morchat. Welcome, Dr. Morchat. All right, welcome, Dr. Morchat. Do you have your audio turned on?
Yes, I do now.
Awesome. Let me minimize my screen here. So we're going to basically have you as the star there. Perfect. Thank you for working with us today. Dr. Morchat, you are the Director of Radiology down there at Implant Concierge.
That's correct, yes.
Today we're going to go through basically a session of scanning a patient. What are the important topics that we need? You guys have that set up to scan our patient. And I know this is going to be basically a demo scan, so there's going to be no radiation, but we're going to go through all the steps that would be just like we do live. Dr. Morchat, do you want to go ahead and bring Andy back down into the room, and we can get this set up?
Absolutely, our handsome model right here. But like Jim said, I'm Dr. Michael Morchat. I'm the in-house oral and maxillofacial radiologist here at Implant Concierge. And today I'm going to show some of the features. This is the device that we have here, of course, in the office. It's the Vatech Green CT. And so we're going to show you how to take a proper cone beam. Now, it's very important. You'd think it was just a simple step, but taking a proper cone beam, you're really going to have a better image. And when you have a better image, then it's, of course, it's going to be more diagnostic, and it's going to be, useful, of course, when you're integrating it with the ISO. Okay, Andy, so if you please walk around here. So number one, we want to make sure that the patient is in the machine proper. So we want to make sure that the height is adjusted. Andy, could you please put your chin on the chin rest? Okay, and we're going to separate. There, that's a lot better, right there.
So Dr. Morchat,
so number one, we want
the importance of the arches, and I think that bite stick there is going to go ahead and separate those arches specifically for getting some separation of the occlusion for our implant planning on there. Yep.
Absolutely, Jim. So number one, let's pretend that we're going to be placing an implant in the area of number 9. So soft tissue separation is not just important when you're doing guided surgery, but also very important if you're looking at any kind of abnormality or potentially pathology. Okay, Andy? And now we're going to close the temporomandibular joint region.
And we do have our mid for easy positioning. And then the other thing we talked about, Dr. Morchat, is making sure that the patient's occlusion is flat on there.
Absolutely. And as you can see here, the laser beams that come with the device, of course, shows the occlusal plane is perfectly parallel to the floor. Okay.
So we have our temple sports closed. We're going to go ahead and click ready on the device on the upper right there. And that allows us to basically, we're ready to take the scan. Dr. Morchat, we talked about having the patient close their eyes. What is the importance of that? Or why do we do that when we scan?
You'd be surprised. So at least 50% of the time, when a patient has their eyes open, they will follow the device around their head. And so now you're going to have some movement. And so there's a few areas. As you can see here, Andy already has his hands on the arm supports. So when the patient actually has their eyes closed, they're, of course, not going to fall over. So now let's take a sample scan here.
And the scan time on the Vatech device is anywhere from 4.9 seconds to 9 seconds. Dr. Morchat,
That's correct, Jim. And it seems like 9 seconds is a long period of time, but compared to a lot of other devices, 9 seconds is still very, very fast. And here we're going to take a sample scan.
All right, we just hit the ready button and taken our scan there.
Yes.
I think we hit our reset button on that. So that would technically rotate around the patient's head. Dr. Morchat, what are you seeing on the capture screen now?
One second. I'm sorry there, Jim. CT. Let's take that scan again. Confirm.
So once your lights come on, we're going to go ahead and position our patient. So get Andy standing up straight there. Once your beams come on, we can go ahead and do our positioning again.
Come inside, Andy.
Click ready.
Okay.
Close your temple. Click ready. Okay. All right, go ahead and press and hold, and we can go ahead and take our scan. All right, Dr. Morchat, are we having some technical difficulties down there?
A little bit.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and let's skip to the next. Let's go ahead and get Andy out of the device, and we will go through. That would actually go ahead and scan around the patient's head. I'm going to come back to my screen here, and we are going to look at the capture window here on my screen. So let me get this over. Paul, can you send it back to me? All right, so you should be able to see my screen next. Okay. And let's go here to our post capture. So after they captured the patient, let's go ahead and look and see what we have here on screen. So we are going to take the scan here. Once we're done, we have our capture. Right now we're reconstructing. Then this is going to go into changes of reconstruction into DICOM. This is going to be saved on your database, wherever that database is located. You have the option to click save, or it can auto save. That's something that we can set up, usually set up that to auto save. Once it's finished, you can go up to acquisition. We can see our patient right here, and now we can see the finished product there for our scan. So once we have our scan, I think what we're going to do next is we're going to look at the results of our scan. We have our patient here. Dr. Morchat's going to join me online here to go through some radiology review. So Dr. Morchat, Director of Radiology down there, I have my Vatech screen up. I can see our EasyDent Eye with our patient. Dr. Morchat, can you see the screen also down there in San Antonio?
Yes, we can. It looks great.
Looks fantastic.
Thanks, Andy.
So when going through a volume, and it's very crucial, the number one thing you want to do before you dismiss the patient is to make sure that there's no significant amount of movement or any other abnormalities. So the number one view that you want to do that with is with the axial. So here, as you can see, that the cortical outline of the maxillary sinuses, there's a thin and continuous cortical outline. And based on this, you can tell right away that there is no significant amount of movement. And that's really key when you're looking at these volumes. The main view when you're looking at the volumes, of course, is going to be these three. So coronal, of course, being front to back in the view here, axial being parallel to the floor in this view here, and then, of course, your sagittal, which your mid-sagittal line, of course, is going to be the midline, but working basically from left to right. When I go through a volume myself, I always look at everything that might be dark. So going from the coronal view back and forth, really you can see, everything from the cervical vertebrae to the temporal mandibular joints to all the maxillary or paranasal sinuses, as well as the nasal cavity.
Dr. Morchad, do you want to go through the axial slice here and kind of do our review? I mean, you and I had kind of went through this before.
Absolutely.
I think on this case, we put out some secondary findings through here also.
And that's also what you're looking for. It's very easy when you take a scan that you look at the area of interest. And in our case here, we're looking at number 9 to place an implant, but also we should be looking for any additional findings. And here, as Jim said, we already went through this volume and we did find some additional findings. So here, you can see on number 2, there's a low density around the roots, potentially from a missed canal or untreated portion of the apex. And so here we have persistent rarefying osteitis. As we continue to scroll, as you can see here, there's calcifications that's anterior, posterior to the airway at the level of the soft palates. And here, based on those findings, we know that there's calcified sinohyoid ligaments. And as we continue into the mandible, again, number 30, you can see also has persistent rarefying osteitis. So based on these findings, of course, you have the multiplanar view being the coronal, axial, and sagittal view, but still I consider the gold standard still being 3D reconstructed panoramic. And as you can see here. And so since we're trying to plan number 9, here you can see that we can use the cross sections and basically look along the long axis of the canal.
And next, we're going to go ahead and take measurements.
Go ahead, Jim.
Next, we're going to go ahead and take our measurements for that implant site.
Absolutely.
And then what we can do is I'm going to go ahead and hide these. And if anyone has any questions on more details of implant planning, in our first couple sessions, we went through more implant planning with all the different windows, 3D pan, sectional, and MPR, so you can get more details through our Customer Learning Center. Let's go over to Insert Implant. And we're placing number 9. We have it set for the Biomet 3i in our implant. I'm going to go ahead and click on Insert. You'll notice it inserts on screen right here right away. It follows the long axis of our sectional line here, so I can click on the implant itself, and I can go ahead and rotate through, and we can move this into position. As I scroll across, we can look and see if we need to position that in any different form or different area. We could right click, change size of the implant there. But what we're going to do here, from this point, we have our bone density window over here. You can see as we do have our going through our gutta percha there and then the tooth, so we do have some higher readings for our bone density range. Let's go back to our MPR window, and I'm going to scroll up into the maxilla. Well, let's drag and find our implant here. We're going to go ahead and right click, and we're going to go Start Oblique menu. And this is going to go over to our oblique tool here. And you can see in my axial slice here, I've got my green arrow. And this is where I can grab our line and we can rotate around that implant 360 degrees. So we do have a lot of offices that want to go ahead and case plan themselves in the Vatech software and then send it off to the lab. What we're going to show next here is how to do that export, but then we can also send this case where Implant Concierge or your lab can see what you have placed and then do your planning from there through the guided surgery. So we've spun around that, looked at our tooth. Dr. Morchat, I guess the next thing would be is we need to export this. So I'm going to go up to main menu and I'm going to go down to export here. And what Andy's going to be talking about here in a few minutes is the need to the process of sending this file to your lab. So save type, we want to save this to a local disk, meaning we're going to save it to our desktop or a flash drive or some other storage. We have the capability to compress our zip file. I added in my project file here and the viewer. And I also have anonymized everything for HIPAA purposes. Then I'm going to go ahead and click on save. It's going to pop up there. I click select folder, and I've already done this so we can see the result, but here's going to be our saved DICOM right there. After this, we can go ahead and let's switch over to Andy down at Implant Concierge. He's going to walk us through the point where we've taken setting up the account, looking at what Implant Concierge, kind of the steps that Brett talked about in the beginning there. So Paul, if you could switch us down to Andy Morey, and we're going to go ahead and welcome Andy. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to hear what this whole process is. We've got our scan, we've got our STL file, we've planned it in the Vatech software. One question I get is, can I plan it in the Vatech software and send it to the lab, or do they have to totally plan it again? I think you're going to touch on some of those things. So Andy, you are the special accounts manager down there at Implant Concierge. Welcome, and I'm going to let you take it from here. Thank you. And let's get your audio on there, Andy.
Sorry about that. Thank you. But yeah, thank you for having me, Jim. I definitely appreciate the opportunity to not only talk about the digital workflow, but it was pretty exciting playing CT patient for a little bit there in the morning. So that was fun. But what you should see there on your screens right now is the Implant Concierge website. Obviously, by the pictures and kind of reputation, Concierge is pretty synonymous with guided surgery. But really, what I like to say is, Implant Concierge is more than just a surgical guide lab. There's a reason our name is Implant Concierge, because at the end of the day, what we're truly trying to do is provide a concierge solution for guided surgery within your practice. And I mean by that, what kind of been given a preview of so far is kind of full service where once you take CT, once you take the STL, you can send that to Implant Concierge, and from that point on, we can do all of the work. And that's a really great option for doctors who are just trying to maximize their patient time and their chair time, or maybe doctors who just haven't had a chance to incorporate, technology and different machines in their office. But as you begin to incorporate more technology into your workflow, Implant Concierge is able to be very modular and adapt to your specific workflow. So as we walk through right now, if you have the Vatech Green CT, their Easy Dense software is really, really powerful. It's a really great planning software. So if you've gone through treatment planning your own cases, we're more than happy to utilize your treatment plans in order to create a surgical guide. So you'll see here that there's a lot of different treatment planning options, whether you have Implant Concierge to do the plan for you, or whether to utilize that translation service where we go ahead and design off of your Vatech treatment plan. To the surgical guide themselves, of course, Implant Concierge is able to create, the many different kinds of surgical on your clinical needs. So in this case, we just planned an immediate extract, immediate placement of that number 9 implant. So since the patient has existing teeth, this is going to be a great candidate for a tooth-supported guide. It's the most stable surgical guide where we're able to utilize the existing dentition to support that surgical guide. But if you have a fully edentulous patient, we're of course able to create those tissue supported guides as well. And you can see it has those perpendicular sleeves for the fixation pin, anchor pins, whatever name they happen to go by, in order to keep it nice and stable on that edentulous ridge. And then as you can see, if you have a very advanced case, Implant Concierge is also able to create, those bone-borne guides or bone reduction guides with the stacking components, kind of those really high level surgical guide designs. But what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to kind of shift gears over into the user side of things. What I have here is I'm logged into a little demo account, but this is to demonstrate what you're going to see if you decide to create an Implant Concierge account and utilize our services. So you can see that when you log in, you're going to have all of your in-progress cases listed out below. And what we're going to go ahead and do is create a brand new case to go ahead and upload those files we just captured on the Vatech CBCT. So you can see once we click that Create Implant Concierge case, we now have all those different workflow options I talked about earlier, whether Implant Concierge is going to plan the case for you. But in this case, with Jim, we already created that really nice Vatech plan. So I'm going to go ahead and specify we plan this case on the Vatech. Let's go ahead and create the case. It's going to go ahead and ask for some basic patient information. So we can go ahead and input that info. It's also going to ask for a surgery date. So we'll go ahead and specify that. If you don't have a surgery date, then you would just need to specify what date you would like to receive the surgical guide by, so that we can go ahead and design and put into our production accordingly. And then, of course, we need to specify what instrumentation and implants we're planning. So we will go ahead and specify that Biomed implant. And since this is a number 9 implant site, we'll go ahead and mark maxilla and click that green next button. So as Brett kind of alluded to earlier, through this digital implant workflow, there's a lot of different options. You can outsource it to a lab, you can outsource it to Implant Concierge, or you can take all this process on yourself. One of the great values of sending it to Implant Concierge is because virtual implant planning is kind of our specialty, we've actually designed our website from the ground up to be automated, to have integrated automated workflows. This means as a clinician, rather than you having to memorize all the different variables, all the different workflows involved in guided surgery, you can create a case on Implant Concierge and the website will lead you through all the steps. You don't have to memorize all those pathways. And the way that it does that is based on these two tooth charts that you see in front of you here. So just like the tooth charts say, on the left-hand tooth chart, we're going to provide the patient's current dentate state, and we're going to do so by clicking on any teeth that are currently missing. So if I click on number 9, you'll see that the little tooth disappeared, indicating that it's missing. But we know it's not actually missing. It's going to be an immediate extract. So when I click it twice, that lets our team know that it's going to be an immediate extraction. And what you'll see is that as I continue to click through this tooth chart, the options below begin to shift and adapt. And that's the website recognizing the workflow needed for the specific case that you're elaborating on by filling out these tooth charts. So on the right-hand tooth chart, we'll go ahead and specify the restorative plan, which is, of course, to have an implant in that number 9 position. So once I click that little pontic, we now have our orange symbol, or implant symbol, excuse me. And the rest of the page is essentially going to be kind of like an ordering form now. You can see that we can mark, yes, we would like to order a surgical guide. If you were wanting a provisional, since this is in the aesthetic zone, you have the option of ordering that provisional. We can specify, please plan this case as screw retains or a cement retains. And if you have any sort of pathological or anatomical concerns, you can have an in-depth interpretation conducted by Dr. Morchat. So we'll go ahead and create the case. And then this is just kind of giving a summary of the services that you've requested. Nothing is actually built out until the guide is printed and shipped. So if you need to add services or remove services, that can definitely be done so through the lifetime of the case. This green button is basically just giving our Implant Concierge team authorization, to begin working on this case. And so earlier when I talked about those automated workflows, this is what I'm talking about, in the sense that once the patient's case has been created, Implant Concierge is going to tell you what is needed next with these automated red buttons. So these red action buttons, as you can see, is telling us, hey, doctor, you need to upload your DICOM files as well as your STL files. So we'll go ahead and do so. Once I click on those red buttons, it's essentially bringing up something very similar to a Dropbox in the sense that you can drag those files you exported right into the dotted box, or you can go ahead and click the little blue button, which is going to go ahead and bring up your typical loading screen. And then you can see there's our zip patient DICOM data that we exported from the Vatech. And then we just give it a second to upload. And once it says 100%, we'll click that green complete button. And now you'll see that red button disappears, indicating the step is now pending on Implant Concierge. And so we're going to go ahead and do so for the diagnostic cast as well. So just like Brett mentioned earlier, you have the option of shipping us those physical models if you need to. But since we have that great Vatech machine that was able to provide us an STL, we'll go ahead and upload that file instead. And you'll see it through that same Dropbox style upload. We can either drag it in or click the little blue button and locate our patient STL file. Once it reaches 100%, we'll once again just click complete. And now you'll see that on the user side of things, there is no more pending action. And now it's up to Implant Concierge to move the case forward. So I'm going to go ahead and shift gears into the planning software that we use, which is the co-diagnostic software. So one of the main reasons why everything has to be kind of funneled through the co-diagnostic software is because there's a lot of really great treatment planning softwares out there, especially like the Vatech. But the main differentiating factor is co-diagnostics is a true CAD/CAM software in the sense that it has the capabilities to actually create 3D designs, such as a surgical guide. So we have that great Vatech treatment plan. What we've gone ahead and done is translate it into co-diagnostics so we can go ahead and proceed with that surgical guide. So you see what we have is, of course, the CBCT, and you'll see that the STL file has actually been merged into the CBCT scan. And this is a really important component of guided surgery, because what you have to remember is we plan the implant on the CBCT, but the surgical guide is actually designed on the STL. And so there needs to be a bridge between those two pieces of information, and that's where the merge comes into play. So when we evaluate a merge as technicians here at Implant Concierge, we basically want to verify that, number one, the STL is true to the patient's dentition, and that's done by scrolling through, and you can see we can verify that it has that really nice intimate fit. It's out really hugging the patient's anatomy on the CBCT. And then even if that STL is important, we need to make sure that we position it correctly into place and that it's not misaligned with the CBCT. Because if that misalignment happens, then you're going to have a great fitting surgical guide, but it's going to deliver that implant in the wrong position. So the merge is extremely crucial. The other thing that we'll have to do is, of course, since number 9 is an immediate extract, there's an existing tooth in place right now. And that's not, the software is very smart. It's going to tell us, hey, there's a tooth there. We can't add any resin, which is going to be a problem for the guide, of course. So what we'll do at Implant Concierge as well is we'll conduct something called a virtual extraction, where just like it sounds, we'll virtually extract that tooth to simulate that post-extraction dentition. And now when we create our surgical guide, since that tooth is no longer interfering, we're able to go ahead and design the resin in that space. And you can see here's our tooth-borne surgical guide for this case, with the surgical sleeve incorporated for the guided kit, as well as the verification windows here, which all of our tooth-supported guides come with. That basically allows you to visually inspect the guide and confirm that it's fully seated by making sure that those incisal edges have really, really great contact with the underside of the surgical guide. And at this point, once the design is complete and you as the clinician have reviewed it and said, hey, it looks great, Implant Concierge, go ahead and create our surgical guide. We'll go ahead and throw this design into production, and Brett's going to have a really cool video showing you that process.
Perfect, Andy. Thank you so much for that. Let me bring up Brett Royale, and we're going to go ahead and talk more about this 3D printing and the next step. So Brett, Andy just reviewed us going through all the case planning, working with the clinicians or the dentist. Is that something you guys do live, Andy and Brett, where they log on to the computer and you kind of share files and then show screens and go through the case planning? Or are there different options?
I'll answer that question, Andy. Yeah, Jim, ultimately we want to be the virtual dental assistant for the dentist. So, the dentist can do everything themselves, but their time is so valuable. So does it make sense, especially in the COVID era where you only have so many minutes in the day to see so many patients? So what you really want to do is you want to focus all your time on the patients and not on the computer. So as a virtual dental assistant, we'll go ahead and create the case and then present it to the dentist. Usually those online meetings, they last anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. Obviously, once the dentist works with a certain case planner, 3D case coordinator, once they do 2-3 cases together, then the cases become very efficient because the virtual dental assistant from Implant Concierge knows the preferences for you, the dentist, and they can get that case just pinned up, ready to roll. We'll present it to you on an online meeting and a go-to meeting, just like we're doing right now. And then as a dentist, you'll say, hey, I don't like that number 8 position. I like the apex of it. Let's go ahead and move it a little more palatal or a little more distal. And I would like to I'm going to go ahead and use a custom abutment. So let's go ahead and get it within the 20-degree range of a restorative component, and we can fine tune that message. But as the dentist is maybe eating their lunch, and telling Rebecca or Lisa or Catherine, whoever, what they want, as they're just talking, the 3D case coordinator is making the moves for them in real time. So it's a very dynamic, very efficient process, Jim.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, yeah, tell us what's going to happen next. I think this is the exciting part. Not that yours wasn't, Andy, but now we get to see some 3D printing and cutting and things. So Brett, you've provided me with basically a video of 3D printing. It looks like multiple guides there. So I'm going to go ahead and play the video, and I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, just pause it for me here and there so I can catch up because it's a pretty quick video. But what you're going to see here, this is a Stratasys, and here in San Antonio, we have 4 Stratasys printers. They are a beast of machines. They're workhorses. As you can see, we can get around anywhere from 18 to 22 guides on one print. And these larger commercial printers, we can print a tray of surgical guides in about 3.5 hours. If we need to print a single surgical guide, we can do that in as little as 35 minutes to ship it out overnight AM delivery, produce that. But as you play the video, you see that tube head going back and forth, and ultimately all it's doing is layering 17 microns of resin and support to create a very precise droplet. And every time that head goes across, it's hitting the green light and curing the resin. And every time it moves across, but you can't see it, but the tray itself is dropping down as the head goes back and forth. And I have a hard time doing both hands at the same time, so it kind of goes like that, So luckily the machines are more coordinated than I am with my hand gestures, Jim. But they're just great machines. Obviously, a dentist probably wouldn't purchase a Stratasys for their private practice because they are very expensive. But you have a lot of great options for from anywhere from $3,000 to $20,000. You can buy a great in-office machine that can produce. So we'll hit that. We'll kind of watch a few more slices being printed there, Jim. The next step here is that literally it's being washed with a power washer. And in that, what you're seeing is we actually have instead of like a sandblaster, it's a power washer where you're rinsing the support. The support material that's printed is like wax. So it literally just washes off. And then so the high pressure washer rinses off the wax material and it leaves the perfect resin for the perfect guide that fit the anatomy, the way it was designed earlier. Once it's been printed and it's been washed, then we go into the sleeving and also the quality control section, which is usually we have 3 different people do a QC check for each guide, but it's really important. You can see the paperwork there in front of the technician, taking the right surgical sleeve, and we even have each surgical guide instrumentation for each guided handle kit or whatever instrumentation they're using, the doctor, we have that actual physical parts here in San Antonio at Implant Concierge, so we try it in. So not only do we try it in to make sure it works, we also can verify the positioning and the depth, and then we also like to make sure we have good clearance, because it's one thing to design it in 3D on the computer screen, and it's another thing to actually use it in the mouth. So every now and then we have to make some chairside adjustments, which you saw that on the wheel as well. So there's the sleeving, doing the QC checklist. Once it's good to go, we go ahead and get it ready for shipping. And here's a beautiful thing that we don't get to see a lot of right now, but hopefully in the near future, anywhere from 75 to 80 guides per day is kind of what we like to go for. Right now, we're not quite that number, but we'll bounce back along with everyone else as well. So you can see the technology the planning, the coordination, but it really all starts with a great CBCT and a great diagnostic cast from an alginate impression with the STO file. So you see it all come together there, Jim.
Perfect. Now, Brett, we've talked about these cases. Let's talk a little bit more about the case that Dr. Morchat and I did the planning through, and the case that Andy had worked up. This was, a number 9 immediate, and you want to kind of go in a little bit more about the whole case and what the details were, and walk us through specifics. It's nice we have the whole case here, so we can kind of go through a live case demonstration here.
Yeah, it is. So you saw the technology, and that's all great. You saw the great expertise from Andy with the software and the planning, but really, if it's not executed correctly, then it's all for nothing. So I want to show you a case that went just beautifully, and it's from Dr. Eduardo Lorenzana, periodontist down here in San Antonio, Texas, a good friend. And there was no pressure, Jim, because the patient was also a dentist and also one of our top referrals to our imaging center. So we had a lot of pressure to perform in this case, but as you'll see, I think in the outcome, I think everyone was really, really happy and excited. So let's go ahead and hit the next slide there for me, Jim. So you already saw these images, but you can kind of see, the merge is so critical, and you have to do a cross arch merge verification. A lot of people ask me, well, can I just scan maybe a quadrant or a half an arch? And you can, and we can make a surgical guide off of it, but we really recommend, and we really want a full arch STL and a full arch CBCT, because that cross arch merging is so critical. But you can see here, the merge is beautiful. Andy showed it too with the blue outline, and also the initial treatment plan with the surgical guide sleeve, right coming up in a beautiful position, not touching any soft tissue. Let's hit that next slide, look at a few more images. So there's the treatment plan, there's the implant. It was placed pretty subcrustal in an effort to get some good initial stability. Obviously, when you're doing immediate extract, immediate place, that's critical. Now, what's nice about a lot of guided systems, not all, but most, the planning was done with the Navigator kit that you saw with Andy working. This case was actually what you're seeing now is a Straumann, but both of those kits are great because they're what we call fully guided kits, which means that not only are your drills being guided through the surgical sleeve, but the implant is also being placed through the surgical sleeve, and that's critical, and I'm going to show you why here in a little bit. Let's hit that next slide there, Jim. So this is, because she had her tooth number 9, we just went ahead and using the code diagnostic on the what they call DWAS, the restorative side of the software, we just mimicked her natural anatomy. Let's give her back what God gave her, and if she wants to change it, then we can modify it from there. But in this situation, we used her natural tooth. We just pretty much recreated it in the software, in the restorative, and then we merged that restorative aspect back to the treatment plan on the surgical side as well. But while the surgical guide was printing, we were also printing the provisional. So that's pretty sweet. So let's go ahead and see how this comes together. Now, since we have all the files, we're stacking a lot of data. There's the surgical guides. It's been printed. It's delivered. You can see the nice intimate fit. Anytime you're using guided surgery, it shouldn't rock, okay? If it rocks, most likely that's something to do with the impression itself, okay? So we shouldn't have rocking surgical guides. If it does rock, then you have to make sure there's no tissue infringement. So obviously this is a virtual extraction, so we can only kind of guess with a great estimate of where the soft tissue is going to be on that virtual extraction. But in this situation, sometimes that sleeve from the surgical guide can only be in one position because we're using a fully guided kit. So we have to place a sleeve where this instrumentation dictates, and also the treatment plan of the implant placement. So in this situation, the guide was perfect, it fit, there was no rocking, the sleeve is just barely above the soft tissue, everything looks good. There's the implant, you can see in the money shot, the implant coming through the surgical guide sleeve. Dr. Lorenzani elected to do a little bit of grafting as well, but everything's looking really nice here at this point. So now it's the critical time. So let's hit the next slide. It's the money shot. How does that provisional go? So in this situation, it's a real-time video that's going to play for us here. Dr. Lorenzana literally took a full contoured screw retained crown, bonded to the tie base, stuck it in, screwed it in, snapped my gosh, my brain went blank. Floss, there we go. Checking the contacts, looking for the occlusion, and also really managing the soft tissue here. You know, it's really important with surgery-ready provisionals is that guided surgery is extremely precise, but as you guys know, nothing in dentistry is perfect. There's a lot of variables that go into all this. So we always over contour a surgery-ready provisional. You know, we're going to over contour the tissue management, over contour, make the context a little tighter than probably anticipated, and always bring it a little taller than anticipated. That way, if there's any variable in the placement of the implant, then it's very easy for you to remove some of that PMMA versus trying to add to it later on. So in this case, literally, Dr. Lorenzana placed the implant, dropped in the provisional, and that took all of about 12 minutes, minus the extraction, of course. So
Right.
But, you know, it's pretty amazing it's a great day anytime you can put the guide on, place the implant, and put the provisional on, you know, in 12 to 15 minutes. That's a great procedure. Not only is it great for the dentist, obviously, for chair time and for revenue, but for the patient. I mean, what an experience, you know, 30 minutes extraction, implant, provisional, walking out the door. I mean, that's someone's going to sing the choir for sure for you. So you can see we had a great outcome on this case.
Awesome. Well, Brett, thank you for taking us through that case and knowing you, Andy, knowing all the details of the live, you know, the case itself. We've covered a lot today. We've covered like an overview of what happens throughout the whole process. We went through scanning our cast model, different ways to send that. We went through positioning the patient in the Vatech device, what it looks like post-op scan, the capture screen, and then the post-op acquisition screen, saving it into there. We went through with Dr. Morchat on a brief overview of identifying patient movement or lack thereof, how to get the best image, doing overall radiology review, quick preview of what he does, and then did some case planning. Andy, you took us through the whole case, and then Brett, you finished up with the details of the case. We do have some questions coming in, and I would like to bring Paul, if you can come back up and kind of let's go through some of those questions for our whole Implant Concierge team on there.
Yeah, so we have some great questions that came in. This first one here, can you produce stackable surgical guides for bone reduction, implant placement, and provisionals for edentulous patients?
Yeah, we can, Paul, and that's a great question because it's a really hot topic right now in dentistry, especially in guided dentistry. Is when you want to do a fixed hybrid, you know, managing the restorative space but also delivering the bone reduction along with the provisional. And there's a lot of little minor miracles in these cases, very complex, but we've been doing it for a couple of years now, and we have some really great procedures to help dentists. But it's you know, I'm going to go off on a small tangent, Paul. I don't know who asked the question, but I'm going to talk to them directly, but also everyone else as well. You know, bone reduction surgical guides are great for some cases, but I think in the industry right now, there's a lot of people saying, well, this is a Band-Aid for all full arch cases, almost like how all-in-4 is taken over for it's kind of become synonymous with full arch cases. Not every case requires tilted implants, and not every case requires a bone reduction guide that requires extensive reflection of tissue. So at Implant Concierge, we really lead with a different technique called an anchor pin system, where it requires much less manipulation of the soft tissue, and also it's just easier to and more predictable from a surgical outcome and aspect on the surgery and the provisional. I think most importantly also is that the anchor pin workflow that we can talk about later on, and we'll be having we actually recently had a study club meeting on that on a webinar, but it's a lot less post-operative discomfort for the patient as well, which is really important because, you know, in COVID days, anything you can do to minimize your patient discomfort, minimize sutures, minimize secondary and third visits because of it, it's important. So when you refer a patient to us, we're going to look at it, and then we're going to make a recommendation or a suggestion saying, hey, we don't need to do a bone reduction guide. We can do this other technique, and we can give you options. So long answer for such a short question, but it's a fun topic that I get really passionate about.
Awesome. What is the typical turnaround time, and has the whole COVID situation had any effect on that?
Has COVID had an impact on turnaround time? Absolutely, because we're all sitting around begging and hoping and praying for cases. So we are definitely on demand. So the service level has never been better. But let's just say we're operating normal, pre-COVID, we'll call it pre-PC versus DC, pre and days of COVID. In the pre-COVID day, we have a team in Costa Rica who helps with the treatment planning on the initial. They do what you saw, Andy, as far as merging the data, creating the initial treatment plan. All that's done in Costa Rica, and I do that in Costa Rica because in Costa Rica I can have more employees than what I actually need, and we do that because I want to have on-demand service for you. So as soon as the dentist uploads the DICOM and we have the STL file, then at that point, usually within an hour to 2 hours, we have the initial treatment plan ready to roll, ready for you to have an online meeting with one of our team members here in the United States. So we're trying to maximize employee time, expertise, and also efficiency. One thing I said earlier, Paul, was that we want to be a virtual dental assistant. Well, a virtual dental assistant means that if you're the dentist, you want them to do something for you right now, they need to do it for you right now. So that's our goal. So on normal times, you're looking at a couple of hours to have the initial treatment plan posted. And then as soon as you schedule your VIP session, then at that point, usually it's the next day or the same day or the next day, we're going to have that meeting, and then we're designing and printing as soon as possible. Sometimes same day, sometimes it's the next day. But it's safe to average about 5 business days to get the guide back in your hands.
Great. Here's another question. Can you talk a little bit about the software you're using for virtual design, the co-diagnostics?
Yeah, so co-diagnostics is a module of a larger software platform called DWAS, Dental Wings Open Software. Dental Wings, if you're familiar with lab software, you have 3 major brands out there. There's ExoCAD, 3Shape, which is the dominant player, and then DWAS, which has a larger market share in some of the European countries. But DWAS is the restorative component module, and then co-diagnostics is its sister for the surgical planning. And those 2 softwares work together to make a really nice plan. We personally use that software here at Implant Concierge for about 98% of our cases. The main reason is because it's been around for a long time. The implant libraries and restorative components is enormous. It has a very, very good library for all the different implant systems, hundreds and hundreds of implants. Most of them I've never even heard of, and I've been doing this for about 18 years in dentistry and implant dentistry. And I think the last thing is that it's a great software because it allows us to go in and out of it because it's open, so it's not closed. So anything with the closing or creates barriers, I don't like that. We don't like that. That limits what we can do, what we can provide. So we work with that software because it's very, very, very flexible. But it is cost. You have other good options out there that are free you can use. They're just not as fine-tuned, not as slick, but they still get the job done. But there's a lot of good options for guided surgery.
Well said. Here's a great question for both you, Brett, and Dr. Morchat. Are radiology reports needed for every case?
Dr. Morchat, that's your question.
At this point, there's not enough radiologists for the number of cone beam scans that are being taken. It's really up to the dentist. Of course, everyone pays malpractice. I pay a lot of money for malpractice, and there's a reason why I do, and that's we're basically covering each other's butts. But it's not mandatory at this time, but that might change in the future.
Okay, great. Let's see here. Brett, can you talk a little bit about the cost of guides, like maybe one versus multiple?
Yeah. So I like it real simple here at Implant Concierge. And so we have a very, very simple price schedule. Is that we have a couple of different prices for treatment planning. If you go to the website where Andy showed it to you earlier, treatment planning, we have 3 different versions of treatment planning. I'm just going to talk about the VIP, which is the virtual implant planning, where we really hold your hand and do everything for you. we charge $150 for treatment planning. And it doesn't matter if it's 1 implant on the maxilla or it's 6 implants on the upper and 6 implants on the lower. The treatment planning fee is always $150 when you select the VIP service, okay? Now the surgical guide is always $225, and it doesn't matter if it's a single or if it's 8 implants, it's always $225 per arch. So the treatment plan is $150 per case, and the surgical guide is $225 per arch. Now, when you start talking about stackables and bone reduction guides and anchor pin guides, start talking about more complex cases, then of course the prices will change. But that the key building blocks of the charges are $150 for planning, and then $225 for a guide, and then there may be more add-ons depending on how complex the case is, as well as any kind of provisionals and such.
Got it. Here's a great question. A couple of people asked, if I have my own 3D printer in my office, can I have Implant Concierge design the guide but allow me to create it myself, print it myself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really believe that this is the future for a lot of dentists in their offices. As 3D printing becomes more readily available, the resins continue to be advanced upon what they can do as far as chairside in the practice. 3D printing is going to, in my opinion, and I'm not an expert in this, but I do believe that 3D printing will replace in-office mills as being the go-to chairside manufacturing modality. So Implant Concierge has a workflow where we do the treatment plan for you, we present it to you, and then we'll design the surgical guide for $99, and then we sell you the STL file. And then at that point, all you do is you take the STL file, put it in your printer, and hit print like a piece of paper at that point. The thing though, that when you print it, you have to also remember that there is some post-processing, and you also have to sleeve the surgical guide. So, you need to make sure you keep your sleeves in stock. You can buy them from most implant manufacturers. You can kind of Google. We do sell sleeves here as well, but recommend you buy them from your implant manufacturer or the OEM.
Great. Thanks, Brett. Here's a good one. Bouncing off that first question, are you able to create full arch provisionals as well?
Yes. Yeah. Different types, different forms, depending upon what the doctor and the patient needs are, as well as what the anatomy provides us. That's something that we do during that VIP session. We'll actually show the provisionals, show how they work, and then also have a design meeting to show you, okay, this is how you're going to integrate these surgically at the time of surgery.
Great. Let's see here. Here's another good one. Is Implant Concierge limited to implant brands for case planning? What implants can I or cannot use to make a guide with you?
Okay, so right now we're compatible with over 35 different guided kits, and we're compatible with all implants. So if you're using an implant system that has a guided kit and it's a mainstream implant here in the United States, in the UK or Europe, most likely we're going to be compatible with it already. And when you start a case at Implant Concierge, Andy didn't go through it in detail, but you have the choice, and you can see all the different listings of different implant guided kits and the implant systems that are available for you. If you don't see the name, you can type it in, and you can choose a pilot guide only, and choose a pilot guide. And then when you're meeting with a 3D case coordinator, you can say, hey, I'm actually using this kit, and then we will make the case work for you based upon the instrumentation that you have. So there really are no limitations when it comes to the implant brands or the instrumentation. We're going to have a solution, whether it's a fully guided solution or a pilot, we'll be able to provide a solution for you.
Great. Thanks, Brett. Here's something. So here's a question about kind of the COVID situation. How's COVID changed your business? I think you addressed the shipping part of that. So either by shipping to clients or internally, how are you guys taking precautions, in this COVID time?
Well, if I turn my camera around, I would show you a really nice, beautiful, empty office with a few members here. So obviously, here in San Antonio, we're following the state of Texas rules. We're following the federal recommendations, and as well as the local recommendations, which are in San Antonio are much more stringent than the state of Texas from the governor has provided. So social distancing, wearing masks in the office. Right now, I'm not wearing a mask, and neither is Andy, but we're we're way beyond 6 feet away from each other, and I'm in my private office, but everyone's wearing a mask and obviously gloves when they're handling the surgical guides. So, those are the basic rules that it's really worth following here in the office. We are taking temperatures for all employees when they come in and keeping a log to make sure that everyone's safe. The guides are not shipped sterile, so when you get them, you need to go ahead and sterilize them in a cold solution. So that's your main saving grace right there. Is right before surgery, go ahead and soak them chairside.
Great. So that is all the questions I have. Jim, do you want to add anything?
I think I'm kind of looking at the question list. We went through really a little bit of everything. Brett, in addition to your guided surgery support and what you provide, you do have Dr. Morchat, board certified radiologist. So you do radiology screening and readings there, and then that gets sent out to the office also. So it sounds like kind of the complete package really for a dentist to be able to send the scan A to Z for all the needs there. And last week we had Gary Cady on talking about the overall patient's health, and Dr. Morchat, even that scan that we looked at for the number 9, we found 2 secondary findings that we can talk about and alert the in that case the dentist on hey, here's what we found in your scan. So it's definitely a bonus of an added service there for you.
Yeah, well, we're excited about the platform of Implant Concierge. We look at it as, the goal is, like I said a couple of times, as a virtual dental assistant, but also, kind of like a Travelocity. So when you're trying to get a case, we want to provide the options for you in one package with one invoice to make it really simple, and also provide upfront pricing so because there's nothing worse than finishing a case, billing the patient, and then invoices coming back in, and next thing you know, all your margins on the case and your revenue has been eaten away. So we do everything we can to make it upfront, the pricing, and we're really excited about some things that are coming down the pipeline in the future as far as integrating dental labs into Implant Concierge as well. We're not a dental lab, even though we provide a provisional. We stop at surgery-ready provisionals. So the vision is to have the labs integrated as well, so the work will continue on and to make it really easy for the dentist. So that's our goal. That's what we're working on. So we want to make it a great platform that solves problems on the digital implant workflow highway.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank everybody for your time today. Andy, thank you for your going through the case and what happens behind the scenes. Dr. Morchat, thank you for the patient positioning, going through your radiology reports, planning the case, kind of spreading your knowledge with us and sharing. Brett, thank you for teaming up with us. It's good to have partners, and we definitely value the partnership at Implant Concierge. The dental industry is about relationships. Vatech, we try and make relationships not only with our clients, but also with different partners, and you are definitely one of the value partners there. Paul, as always, thank you for teaming up with me to do these webinar sessions, and we really want to thank everybody for coming in today. We do have a couple more slides, but this last slide here, specific to Implant Concierge, there's your website, ways to get a hold of you. When we do our trainings, Paul and I do our trainings, we do guide our clients over to this and say, hey, explore their website, give them a call, do a quick Zoom thing, introduce who you are, and see if you can work together. So it is definitely a value added option that you provide, and we thank you on that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your partnership as well, and I hope everyone has a great day, and hope everyone has a fast recovery and health.
Yes, definitely. Paul, what do we have for June 3rd? I know we're moving this to the afternoon, actually the evening session for our next Wednesday on that.
Yeah, so June 3rd, session 9, extraoral imaging, talking about COVID and minimal contact, social responsible distancing practices for our next one, June 3rd, and then we'll probably move to a more monthly format beyond that. So looking forward to this one.
Perfect. Everyone will be getting a flyer for that June 3rd meeting. if you want to see the webinar, everything's been recorded. You can go down to our website there. You will get an email after this with all the information. You'll also get an email with the information of Implant Concierge, the whole team, and contact information there. Support, everyone's starting to get back to the office. We do have a support page on our website for some of the basic things. You can always reach out to the Vatech team there. And as we discussed in the beginning, there will not be, unfortunately, any CEs for today's webinar. We really want to thank everyone. And again, thanks, Brett, and your team down there. And everybody have a great week. Have a safe week. And we will talk to you and everybody in about 2 weeks. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a lot of fun.
Yes, definitely.